questions, but well, first of all, we have the writer-director Aristotle here, and Lizzie, the producer, if you didn't already know. Congratulations on all the success that you've had so far this year with your film. And if you didn't already know, this film won Best Cinematography at South by Southwest earlier this year, which is understandable because it's beautiful the way that it's shot. And I'd love to talk about that in a minute. But maybe we could talk a little bit first about, I'd love to hear just a little more about both of your backgrounds and kind of what you've done before this film that got you here.
Okay. Wow, background. I produced a couple movies before this one. But I started off as a film school kid and went to NYU. A very unique journey. But I think after school I just kind of did anything anyone would let me do, commercials, music videos, short films. I also crewed on larger feature films until I felt like I got to a point where I could really push the projects that I was shepherding along. And then it's been a blur of joy and trauma and all the things in between since then, and getting to make this movie with Aristotle was such a rewarding point and experience for me in my life thus far.
Yeah, well, first I want to thank y'all all for coming. I started off, I'm an artist first and foremost, so I've experimented in a lot of mediums, but did some music videos and some commercials. I made some short films before this. I've experimented with photography, all different types of storytelling, and really just like to make art that makes people think and talk. And to me, the movie isn't the art, it's this dialogue now, so.
Beautiful. And I forgot to mention, well, because the reason why I'm here tonight and doing the Q&A is because Lizzie is a fellow, a Film Independent fellow, and I'm here instead of a member of our programming team doing the Q&A because it's our 30th anniversary of the Film Independent Artist Development Programs, which is exciting. So our Project Involved program has been going now for 30 years. So if there's any filmmakers out there that you don't already know about the programs, I'm happy to talk to you more about the programs later. But Lizzie is an alum both from the Producers Lab and Fast Track, I believe. And you won the Producers Award 2 years ago at the Indie Spirit Awards, which is amazing.
That's my whole message.
So Film Independent is also especially proud of Lizzie and all of the work that Lizzie's been doing in the indie film scene. So
nice. I'm very appreciative of Film Independent. I feel like you guys really came in at a very early and pivotal point for me and provided a lot of gaps in my knowledge and just support that I think I would have had a very different experience if I hadn't had that community that Film Independent brought. So it's so nice to show a movie here and just chat with you guys.
Yeah. Well, we're very proud of this film and all the work that all of our fellows do. So Aristotle, I read that this was a short film first, or perhaps you made a teaser version first, or proof of concept. I'd love to hear more about kind of the genesis of this film and the process you've been in, the steps you've taken to get to the feature.
Yeah, so this started off as a short that I made in 2018, and I was just really inspired by writing something positive about my community, the community of the Bronx and the people that inhabit it. And, it's rare that on the big screen we get to see our faces depicted in positive lights without so many negative stereotypes. And I was really just excited to tell a story that played in that space. And then thankfully, an angel by the name of Elise, who's sitting here from the Sundance Labs, convinced me that I could turn this short into a feature. Even before I did, I tried to quit. I was like, I can't do this, I'm not talented enough. And thankfully, because of Elise and everyone else at Sundance, they helped give me that confidence and helped me turn it into the feature y'all saw today.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, very
And so did you have to kind of, I imagine you had to expand what the story was of what the original idea was, or did you always have that full story in mind when you were making the short?
No, when I was making the short, my focus was the next step, at least for me, was trying to turn it into a play. I really want to make Broadway accessible to inner city youth, but not only make it accessible, but make it so they feel comfortable when they're in the building. And that was really where my heart was. And then I got this insane email from Elise, which kind of like changed my whole focus. But yeah, I mean, all I had was the robbery itself on the platform and a little bit of the diner conversation. So everything before and after that was through the labs.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's quite an expansion.
Yes, that it was.
Very cool. And Lizzie, when did you get involved, and why did you get involved?
I came in sort of at a later period on this project than I usually do. I'm usually sort of there like the first one along with the writer director, but Aristotle had done a lot of work on this movie. There were other producers who were also around and on board, and Jamie Foxx's company, Foxhole, I was very friendly with one of their executives, and they called me originally just to be like, how do you make a movie at this budget in New York and not get like flipped by the unions and like have your whole life go up in flames? And I was like, I can do that. And then I read the script and I thought it was so great, and I thought Aristotle's previous work was really strong, and I especially connected to that scene with Kadir and Gloria in the dark room where they're talking about sort of like the difference between making authentic art and like sustaining yourself in a capitalist system with that art. How do you toe that line? And I was like, it'd be really cool to play that for a room full of film festival people, because I'm like, we should all ask ourselves that question and why we're here. And we just like met like our first meeting, I think we sat for like 2 or 3 hours and just like really vibed, and it was really clear we wanted to make the same movie. And the rest is sort of history. But I just really fell in love with these characters and with Aristotle and the whole project.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So then, when was that you got involved?
That was in, this is 2023. We shot in 2022. That was like the beginning of 2022 then. Yeah, it was like quick, like not that long before production. We did like a little bit of like scripts and a lot of like creative conversation.
Yeah.
But really like came on to like help bring together the like, and Asante was attached. Like there were some pretty big pieces that Aristotle already put in place, but really just came on to like bring it all together and just make sure that the movie was protected and Aristotle was protected in a way that would allow us to do the best thing possible.
Yeah, gotcha. Wonderful. So I'd love to chat a bit about the cinematography, because you were honored for that, especially, and that definitely stood out to me immediately. You know, you start off with such a bold move with having him float, and I think I'd love to just hear some more about what your thought process was behind developing that cinematic language with your DP, and just anything you feel like sharing about what went into all those thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who comes from commercial and videos, I was kind of trained to stare at a monitor all day, and I think that's like the biggest takeaway from the Sundance Labs was like, really my job as a director is to protect the story and to craft performances, and to cultivate a set where the actors feel like they're performing for me and not for the camera, So in that inspiration, I really wanted to shoot black and brown faces the way old Hollywood did, and more intentional. And I think it was a combination of, limitation fosters creativity. We didn't have a lot of time to explore, so I needed to be very intentional about my grammar and what I wanted to say with the lens. But it also helped us create confinements that enhance the themes of the film. So you'll notice like at the beginning of the film, there's way more saturation, there's way more vibrant, bold colors, because we're being immersed in a world that Kadir's being immersed in. But then when he builds his rapport with Luis, colors get desaturated and things become a little bit more familiar and comforting. That's all intentional. You know, in the first act, there's a very shallow depth of field, and as Kadir finds more of himself and comes to terms with his internal conflict, then that depth of field becomes more flat. So I was just intentional in the sense of like, I don't want to spray and pray. I don't want to shoot a master and over in a close-up and hope I could figure it out in the edit. If I got that medium, I only had the time for that medium,
Yeah.
And I think, it helped in creating rules and themes that helped the emotional arc of the story.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think, like, you're also so good about blocking for camera. Because, like, what allows for a lot of these composed shots is that, like, Aristotle really knew where to place his actors and how to, like, play the drama within a frame. Whereas I feel like I've had other experiences with directors where they sort of, like, block everyone all over the room and you end up with, like, a camera running around trying to follow and cover everybody.
Yeah.
And this was really, like, the opposite of that. Like, it was like you, like, would really find a frame and compose everyone inside of that space, which I think was very profound.
Yeah, I think, the goal is to work really hard to create a space where everything in the frame is meticulous and intentional and have the time and the resources and the support to create that sort of filmmaking. And even though this might have not been that for every scene, I tried my best to find areas to choose those battles.
Yeah, well, it felt to me, I was actually thinking as I was watching some of the scenes, I mean, you were saying outside that you shot this in 20 days, which is very fast, with the amount of locations you seem to have as well.
Locations.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I felt in your coverage, everything did feel super intentional, and you often have these beautiful wides or there was one shot, I think when you were in the hospital, that suddenly you were completely outside of the building looking in. And that kind of thing usually takes time to get. So yeah, having it makes sense of Lizzie's comment about being really intentional and kind of knowing how to use the camera to tell your story so that you can use your time well. I think shows, and there's a lot of shots in there. There's just a lot of shots. Yeah.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very bold move to make your main character kind of float at the beginning. And later we see more like dream sequences, but the floating thing feels to me a little different the way we start off than the rest of it, and sets a tone that's like, okay, we're going on a very unique journey here, and this is something we haven't quite seen before. Can you talk a little more about that choice in particular?
Yeah, I just think that whenever you make a movie that is predominantly black and brown faces, it's hip hop, it's slang, it's streetwear, it's very easy to put that kind of movie in a box. And I think we were really intentional out the gate of letting the audience know that this isn't that.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get elements of that, but this isn't that. And this is an emotional story, and it's not just cool. And I thought that was just a great way to let the audience know that there will be not only otherworldly elements that we'll experience in the film, but we are perceiving this story through an artist's eyes. And even the things that we're watching and experiencing might not even be reality. That's just the way Kadir perceived them as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was just an interesting tool to use to do that to start.
Yeah, it was very exciting. A very exciting way to start a film. Yeah. What have both of you learned by working on this film?
How long do you have? Do you want to go first?
No, please.
I learned a lot about trusting my instincts. I'm not going to get too specific, but I learned about trusting instincts. I learned how important it is to have good partners you can really trust. And like what happens when you have a bad feeling about something, you should follow it. Because when you see that go the other way, it can be very tough.
Yeah.
I also just I don't know, on set you learn lessons even tiny little lessons every day, I think this movie kicked my ass, frankly. It was really hard to do this in 20 days. And you have to give a lot of yourself. you have to give a lot to other people. So I just I think was constantly sort of confronted with new conflicts and tools I had to develop. It's a very general answer, having looking at this from a bird's eye view now,
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, similarly, as artists, it's easy to have imposter syndrome, and even from being at the labs, I felt imposter syndrome. I come from a world where I watch rappers throw money in the air and try to shoot that in slow motion and in focus, and to go to narrative filmmaking where all of my contemporaries are just these amazing artists. I was just always felt this pressure. So I think for me, the biggest lesson is I can do this, and it'll take a lot of sacrifice and it'll take a lot of hard work and focus, but I believe it's my purpose. And, if this is my first film, then shit, life's all right.
Yeah, it's a very strong first film.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear a little more about the title, and also the choice to make it's a fictional metro stop. Just, anything you want to share about that?
I just thought it was a cool title, and I grew up on Story Ave, so it just made sense.
Yeah.
It checked a few boxes.
Yeah,
Yeah, in my mind.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little about casting and your two leads and just the process of casting them and why you cast them?
Yeah, I think 90% of a director's job is casting and locations. It does so much of the heavy lifting for you, especially on a movie like this where when you arrive on the day, you have to start shooting, So, being able to work with this cast, specifically Asante and Luis, even if this was my 5th film, I would have been very lucky. But the fact that I had this experience on my first film is a blessing, to say the least, because, trust has been a theme that's been brought up. Trust is huge when you make your first movie because you're so overwhelmed, you get pulled in so many directions. So to have actors that you can collaborate with, that you're you understand this character in the way that I want it to be conveyed, and I don't want to put my ego in front of the movie, but you understand my intention, so now do what you feel is right. That's a blessing to have on the first movie. And the fact that Asante was 20 years old, and he's in every scene of this movie, other than the midpoint sequences, 2 sequences, but he's in every scene, and he showed up every day, and every take was usable and just poignant and composed. And at 20, I mean, if I was that composed at 20, I'd be in a way different space in my life. And Louis is just so wise, and he's done so many different types of movies and worked with so many different types of directors that he brings a certain experience to the film that I don't know if we would have had otherwise, that provided a blanket of comfort for everyone else to know that we were in good hands. So I was really fortunate with the cast on this.
We love to say that Louis Guzman's the best first AD in New York City.
By far. By far.
How so?
By far.
He moves you along.
Yeah.
He runs the
You're
show.
on Louis time
Yeah.
when Louis says that.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like he often has played so many more stereotypical type characters, and it was so great to see him just in more depth, and just a real seeing his acting chops even more so than we normally see. So that was cool.
Yeah. I mean, as a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, my mom was happy.
Yeah. Yeah, he was wonderful. He brought so much depth and heart to the whole thing.
For sure.
And that was great. What's next for the film? What's gonna go on? What's gonna happen next for this film?
We're opening in LA this weekend. Tell your friends. Follow our Instagram. We run it, so we'll personally know if you follow Instagram. And then we're opening in a bunch of cities all over the U.S. and we're continuing to book theaters. And we had a really strong start in New York, which has been so important. Opening weekends are especially important for a movie like ours that depends on performance to stay in theaters. So it's I don't know, we're the little engine that could. And I think a lot of people really connected to and loved this movie, and there's been some pretty like emotional moments for us with a lot of people. So I think that's like for us one of the most important things is to just make a movie that people can really connect to.
For sure.
And I think you really did that.
Oh, teamwork.
Yeah.
Did I leave out anything? Anything next that you wanna mention? No? Okay.
I guess on a similar note, what do you hope audiences take away from watching your film? And
Just perspective. Hopefully when you look at graffiti, your instinct isn't it's just vandalism or criminal activity. You can maybe think about it for a second if this is some sort of artistic expression and someone risked their life and their freedom to express this thing. And I hope that, it offers a layer of empathy. So if you see someone sleeping out on the street, maybe your initial instinct isn't they're just like a bum, but you think like, what if I made all the right decisions in life and still ended up in this position? And I hope my film can at least offer a nugget or a seed of that kind of empathy.
Yeah. And I think that a little bit of kindness can go a really long way in someone's life. Small acts and I think this is a pretty big act of kindness, are very needed in this world, especially in this moment that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Luis's character, he's Luis in the movie too, right? He changes that boy's life. Like, he completely spins it into a different direction than he was going. So
Sure.
That's really profound to get to watch on an example of that on film. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
What's next for both of you, if you have that too?
Try to get out of this strike and make some more movies.
Do it.
I like Aristotle has a couple movies in development that he's working on. I've got a few movies that desperately want to shoot next year. So I think this year's been a big roll this movie out year, and I think next year we're both going to be doing some things. Willing.
I'm trying
SAG,
to sell
you
out.
let us know. Yeah. You're like, I'm Gloria in that
I'm trying to sell out.
Is there anything I missed that you want to share with our audience?
No, I'm so honored that y'all are here to watch this film. It's really close to my heart. It was a true labor of love. It took a lot of sacrifice from a lot of amazing people to show y'all this. So I'm just very honored that we're here right now.
Well, thanks so much for being here at Film Independent, and thank you all for joining us. Tell your friends about the film.
Yeah,
And
please